And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight. You might be thinking that I am here with Eureka, our producer, because he has been my co-host the last couple of weeks, but he's giving me the thumbs down. He's bowing out this week. We have someone else stepping in. Maybe it's a name you guys all know. Maybe it's a name you guys all love. It is our actual usual co-host, Carlos Rueda, back from the streets of Qatar. Carlos, how are you doing?
I'm back, baby. I'm back, better than ever. Semester's over. The finals are done. I found some mild degree of success with those finals. Got some A's rolling in, got some B's rolling in. We're doing all right. It's a nice Tuesday night here, 6:25 p.m. in Tampa. On the other screen, I have Fox Sports 1 pulled up because Georgetown basketball is playing in a little bit.
There we go.
And they are 100% going to lose. So I just have that on there to see how bad we're going to lose by. Quick side note, we are expected to lose by 23 points according to the odds. So that's a great time. Other than that, though, I'm happy to be back, James. I mean, I'll talk about my experience in Qatar in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, just happy to be back. Happy to have seen that World Cup final, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. Like just really, really, really great stuff in the world of soccer, and even a bit of Rowdies news, which I guess is most relevant to this podcast. So happy to be back. Happy to talk Rowdies. Happy to talk World Cup and the wider world of soccer over these past couple of weeks. But again, before that, James, how are you doing? How's your time here been with Eureka? And why is Eureka a slightly worse co-host than myself?
Yeah, I've been doing okay. The World Cup has been fueling me. I've been on quite the soccer high recently.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I've discussed this in previous podcasts, so maybe I am repeating myself here, but international soccer and the World Cup specifically is how I actually got into soccer. I grew up playing, and I really didn't actually like the game all that much until roughly 2006. That's when I actually started following a World Cup tournament, and that's when I really fell in love with, what soccer is, what soccer can do for people around the world. And I think that there are going to be a lot of examples that you and I get into related to that later on in this podcast. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. Eureka will be a very good co-host for anybody filling in. I think the biggest bright spot about Eureka is that he can actually do this for every other sport that RBLR covers. I will say, Carlos, if I needed to step in for hockey, I could maybe do okay. If you're asking me to do baseball or football, I would be like a deer on ice. I would have no idea what to do in that situation.
Deer on ice.
I'd probably, be using the wrong names and the wrong team names even. So I'm not sure that Eureka would be doing that. At least he does have some pan sport expertise.
Yeah, and in hockey especially, like one of the things that I always see on Twitter when I'm trying to expose like some of my friends to hockey for the first time, I feel like everybody struggles more than anything with the names because there's so many influences of Eastern European names and Russian names. I'm sure it'd be challenging if it's the first time for you, but yeah. Eureka, I'm sure, was a great host. Actually, I know he's a great host because I was listening to the episodes here. But you know what? The King's back. I'm back, baby. Here we go. Let's talk soccer, James.
Absolutely. Yeah. So last week, Carlos, what we did here in the Rowdies world is we returned in 4 episodes of a season review. We are finally done with that. We can wipe our brow. We can throw the towel away. We are finally over the 2022 season, where it ended, and everything in between. This week, though, now that you're here, Carlos, there's still a lot to discuss, and some of it is Rowdies related. I think this week we're going to be doing a little bit of stuff outside of Rowdies, a little bit of stuff inside with Rowdies. And, there's going to be everything in the world to talk about coming up in the future, though. That much we will say. Carlos, I think if it's good with you, what we're going to do this week is we're going to discuss your reaction to Sebastian Guenzati leaving. I know that you said you had a lot to go over there, and I think that obviously it's a momentous topic, even if it's not necessarily a momentous occasion, because that makes it sound like a good thing, and I don't know that it is. But, we do need to do that. And in addition, like you said, we do want to discuss at least a little bit your trip to Qatar. We don't want to take up all the space from, where you've gone outside of the RBLR world specifically. But yeah, we've got so much to go through. So beforehand, I just want to say really quickly, follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. And please like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Now, let's go ahead and get into it. Our first topic of discussion today, I think that we're going to do a bad news, good news one, so to speak. You got to eat your vegetables first here. And listeners, our vegetables this week are returning to Sebastian Guenzati. And I think, as most of us know now, he has departed the Rowdies for Indy 11, the same club that Juan Tejada left the Rowdies for. And Carlos, you said that you obviously did not get to discuss this last week, but you had a lot to go over. So, Eureka and I had a hell of a discussion about it, but I think that there's still more to say, unfortunately, because, it's just the case that he is no longer going to be wearing the green and gold here. And I'd love to hear what your take on it is, even if it's not something that I'm going to probably enjoy.
I think it is worth. I just want to obviously talk about his departure briefly before we get into anything else, because obviously, as we know, Sebastian Guenzati is the leading goal scorer in history of this club. For obviously those reasons, the goal scoring, he's a club legend. But I think for me personally, just to share about his experience, and how that's affected my Rowdies fandom, I think he was kind of the first player that I really got emotionally attached to, if that makes any sense. I think longtime sports fans can get that sentiment when it comes to their favorite sports teams. You understand what that feels like. That's not to say any of the players before him weren't any more special or any less special. It's just Guenzati was one of the first players that I was really able to get to know. Chatting with him after games and stuff like that, connecting with him in his origins in South American soccer, and his experience and coming up in the Peñarol Academy in Uruguay, and how he played against my dad and I's favorite team in Ecuador in the international tournaments. Just connecting on stuff like that and really getting to know him as a person was just an experience I will never forget. And it was an experience I really think characterizes what makes this club and soccer at this division really special, is the opportunity for those connections between top players and their fans. So I think for that reason, especially, that Guenzati departure kind of hurt me a little bit more than others. That being said, I think it's something that you could have seen written on the walls. Last season, obviously, he was having his troubles and he wasn't getting a ton of playing time until late. But I don't know. I think the circumstances in which he left, when he was listed as somebody we re-signed a couple weeks ago, and then seeing him depart kind of out of nowhere, was something that I think especially kind of hit me hard. And I put this out on Twitter. Funnily enough, I was in the middle of studying for my biggest exam of the semester, and I got distracted for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just going back and watching Guenzati highlights from 2, 3, 4 years ago. And you know what? Let's just say that exam didn't go as well as it could have gone. I'm not blaming the the transfer news for that. I could have studied better for sure. But it was just unfortunate timing and made that news kind of all the more impactful for me. So I say all that not to kind of bring a downer or anything to the show, and to this episode. I think I just really want to explain with my voice and not really on Twitter how much Sebastian Guenzati means to me as a person, as a player, as the captain of this team. I think in my head, he'll always be the captain of this team. I don't care if he comes back and, those ugly, like blue checkered Indy jerseys that they wear. I don't know. It's so gross when he plays us next year. And it's going to suck to see him playing for another team. But I mean, it's the nature of the business, I'm sure. And in my head, he'll still be the captain of this team. So that being said, I'll keep it short. I just really, really want to reemphasize how much this player means to this club. I don't think any words or any, short essay on Twitter can really, really explain that feeling. I think like the word legend gets thrown around a lot in all sports, but especially in U.S. soccer and USL soccer, where a lot of teams are pretty young, and a guy that scores like 5 goals in a season but has like one really cool moment is like a legend. I think I want to make it clear that like Sebastian Guinzotti is not, just like a one really cool goal type legend. This is a guy that had continuous moments of just really, really, really great performances. Had a huge part in, that COVID conference championship in Louisville that I was at with my dad, and really like his goal in that game and his influence in that game was just, sorry, not his goal in that game, but like the way he played and like the passion he played with was just something that really makes a ball club what it should be. And I think that's why fans loved him, is like that passion that he would show on the field. So whatever, I'm rambling on at this point. I had some notes I jotted down about, a little like thing about what I'd say about Guinzotti, but I think the best way to talk about that is just kind of saying how I feel about him, because he's just like genuinely one of my favorite soccer players of all time. Just great person, great talent. And I'm sure he's going to do well in Indy. He still has a lot to give. You could say he's like on the older side for soccer, but I don't know, like he's like in his early 30s, so he's still got plenty left to give. So I know he's going to do well in Indy, and I wish him all the best. I could totally see him going back to Uruguay to finish his career. There's a lot of good teams down there that would love a striker of his talent. So I'd love to see that for him in the future. But that being said, Sebastian Guinzotti, I'm sure you're not listening, but if you do, thank you so much for everything you've done for this club. And I'm just so sad that, we couldn't win the big trophy with him, the USL title. Yeah. I don't think anybody deserved it more than him with this club. Yeah, he deserved it. So it's unfortunate, but I know he's going to do well. And I hope he stays around the Tampa Bay area in the future. And who knows, maybe he comes back as an assistant coach or something under Neil Collins in the future, whoever's coaching us in the future. So Sebastian Guinzotti, thank you so much for everything you've done. Literally means the world to me, his time with us. So I'll wrap it up there before I start rambling on for another, 10 minutes, James.
Well, I think that was well said. I think that it's important to put out there too, especially with the connection that you just elucidated for everybody who's going to be tuning in tomorrow. And the only other thing that I'll say based on our conversation just now is, you mentioned how he was listed as somebody who was going to be back.
Yeah.
And so we were all obviously under the impression that Sebastian Guinzotti was going to be back. We would at least have, one more rodeo, so to speak. And I think what's so unfortunate, and I said this with Eureka last week, so I guess I'm getting repetitive again. I'm going to apologize, listeners, but this one does bear repeating just because of where you took it, Carlos. I thought that with him, supposedly coming back, then whenever Sebastian Guinzotti did leave, was my impression, we would have a chance to, do the formal goodbye. The everybody knows this is the last game.
Yeah.
Soak it in, enjoy it while you can, that kind of thing. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get to have that because of the way that it went down. Obviously it is, a professional sports team, and he's a professional soccer player. That's sometimes how it goes. Even someone we're going to talk about probably a little bit later, Lionel Messi, probably didn't really have the leaving for his first and biggest club the way that he wanted to. So it happens in sports and it happens in soccer. And it's just, not something that I think any of us would have expected based on the legend that I think he has created with this club. But, it's not going to be the end of his time in the sport. And just as much as you said, it's not going to be the end of his contributions. We know that much for sure.
For sure. And even apart from just like the emotional part and the legend part, it's a guy who like really started to get back into that form that we know and
he did.
Really came to love at the end of the season. So I think that's why, especially for me, like I thought for sure he'd be back. Well, I take that back. I wouldn't say I for sure thought he'd be back until I saw that we re-signed him. I think before that moment, I figured, well, maybe his time could come to go to another club or to go back to Uruguay and finish his career over there. Just total speculation at that point. But then when I saw we re-signed him, I was like, oh, okay, well, there's no way he's going anywhere now. But yeah, like you said, unfortunately, he didn't have his chance to do his formal goodbye. But personally, just hoping that game against Indy at home happens at a time where I'm in the area. So we could all say our goodbyes properly, I guess. That being said, with a loss to Indy 11, hold on, like he's still playing for the other team now, so I'd still like to win. But yeah, let me just say really quickly how much it's going to suck to see both Juan Tejada and Sebastian Guenzati playing against us.
Yeah.
And not only as just like they'll be on the team, but it's like well assumed at Indy 11 at this point that they will be like the two like big guys up top for Indy 11. Like they are like, I'm forgetting their third player, and I'm totally blanking on it, so I'm sorry about that. But they have a front three, including those two guys, Guenzati and Tejada, that it's going to be a really cool front three to watch when they're not playing against the Rowdies, and I'm sure they'll do a lot of damage together. Really just curious about to like how much the Tejada connection over there played into his decision to go over there. But I guess it's something we'll never really fully know unless we ask, personally. But yeah, happy that they get to link up again because I know they had a great connection when they played down here together. So happy for them, not happy for us, obviously. But it is what it is, James. It is a business, and I'm sure there was, business dealings behind the scenes that we'll never know about.
See, that's one thing I am a little bit interested in, even, with all the rest of the dust settled, is if he was re-signed for the 2023 season, then it, begs the question that Indy 11 had to do something to pay out that contract, you would think. But, is that something that we'll ever get to know? Did they pay a transfer fee? Because I'm not sure that I've seen that anywhere.
Yeah, I feel like they would have said that in the article, right? And
that's what I was. That's what I was thinking. So
yeah, I feel like you usually see like in Tampa Bay Rowdies have, received an undisclosed amount or whatever. But I guess I don't know. Maybe I don't want to speculate too much, obviously, about locker room stuff and whatnot. Right. I think that's too much for us to do, not knowing any context. But who knows? It is one of the things we might not ever know. But I don't know. Maybe we just ask personally, hey, like, what happened when he comes back to play us next year? So we'll see what happens.
Well, before we move on to the next segment, I do want to take a moment and say liking and subscribing to this podcast is free. But if you think you might need some new threads coming up, maybe you or a friend or a loved one even might need some new threads coming up, you can support this podcast just that little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that we've got going on there. There will be a link in the description. And if you're thinking maybe one of these shirts or other designs would make a good Christmas gift, well, there is a promo code that you can use to get 10% off, and that is COYR for Come On You Rowdies. So yeah, if you would like to get a cool gift for anyone who is a fan of any Tampa sports team, please do check that out. There will be a "We Don't Need Forward" shirt coming if the Rowdies keep up their current signing streak. But hopefully that'll change shortly here, Carlos. We'll see how it goes.
I would be fully interested and all in on the all midfielders experiment that we're looking to test out here. I think it would be I think I played around with something like that back in like FIFA 21. Just like throw all my players in the midfield and see what happens. And I will say in FIFA it didn't work out too well. So maybe, but I don't know. FIFA doesn't always translate to real life or ever. So who knows? Maybe Neil Collins has the next revolutionary formation up his sleeve.
As a fan of the Scottish national team who got to see them play in a 4-6-0 effectively, I would probably say that it's not going to work out all that well. But as you said, Neil Collins is different. He is no Craig Levein. So hopefully he is the much better Scottish coach of those two that I just named.
You know, you just need the right players for the system, James. And clearly we just don't have the soccer IQ to understand the all midfielders formation we're going to roll out this year.
Exactly. So now, Carlos, let's go through our World Cup review. We previewed it, you, me, as well as Leo and Ben, formerly of RBLR Sports and currently of RBLR Sports on the Rays side. So we are looking to, get back to the World Cup a little bit here and just update everyone who might not have followed as closely exactly where it was. So the three teams that we previewed were Ecuador and Mexico and the U.S. Ecuador and Mexico, unfortunately, did not make it out of the group. While the U.S. made it out of the group, they did not get past the round of 16. So in the end, not all that much, unfortunately, to point to for our three teams in terms of success. I think that Ecuador can hold their heads up high, though. They had a great tournament, and they showcased a very great young squad. And Carlos, I'm going to come back to you and get some thoughts on that shortly here. The U.S. also showcased what I think is a very, very good young squad. We did get out of the group, which was nail biting because it's a team that effectively scored without having any good forwards. But we're going to have to see how that hopefully changes come 2026 when we are actually hosting. So, Carlos, as anyone listening by now, I'm sure knows, you were over in Qatar. In fact, you had tickets, if I'm not mistaken, to go to every Ecuador game and the U.S. round of 16 games. So can you just give us a real first-person view on not only the Ecuador team, but the stadiums, how it was over there? Where did you stay? What did you eat? What was the atmosphere like? All of that stuff, because I got to tell you, as someone who, has only been able to follow you on the social media side, I personally, let alone anybody else listening, forget them. I am dying to know how it was over there.
It was a great experience, obviously. I can't really say anything else other than that. Like, it was incredibly memorable. And it's one of those things that I'm really happy I got to share with my dad. It was, 2.5 weeks over there, watching all the Ecuador games, as well as, like you said, the USA Netherlands game in the round of 16, as well as Canada Belgium was a pair of tickets I picked up with last second deal before that game. And also Uruguay versus Ghana, which, as you can imagine, given their history,
that was very feisty.
It was a great game. Personally, I was like rooting for Uruguay to pull through into the next round just because of our South American heritage and pulling for all the Latin American teams in general. But the Korea and Portugal game did not go their way. So it created a really, really, really interesting ambiance and atmosphere, given that both teams were getting eliminated. But one set of fans was particularly a lot more happy than the other. And the Ghana fans were just having a great time clowning on Luis Suarez and the entirety of the Uruguayan national team. So that was really, really interesting to watch and see play out. As for where I stayed, me and my dad basically found a Airbnb in like a pretty suburban part of the city. So we were a little separated from everything. And it was really interesting to just kind of, be the only tourist in this neighborhood, essentially. Everybody kind of looked at us kind of funny, but obviously they knew why we were there. And it was generally a pretty welcoming atmosphere in there. But I mean, apart from that, to go back to like the games themselves and the Ecuador and whatnot, I mean, the experience of seeing, your country walk out onto the field in on the biggest stage. There's no bigger stage in the World Cup. Walking out onto the field, hearing the national anthem play, and singing that out loud with 6, 7, 8,000 in the first game, other Ecuadorians, really was one of the things that really like choked you up. Brought a tear to my eye, full honesty.
That's awesome.
Really just incredible experience. And it was the same thing against the Netherlands in that game where I think we can comfortably say that we outplayed the Netherlands,
yes.
a team that should have beat us in theory on paper by like 3 goals, supposedly based on the FIFA rankings. But that goal, the equalizer, when we scored against them, was one of the goals that like the loudest goal I've ever, yelled in my life. It was incredible. and having that moment at that point, there was even more Ecuadorians in Qatar. So I guesstimated, I think Twitter was telling me about 12 to 15,000 Ecuadorians in that second game against the Netherlands. Because it really was like essentially half the stadium just, dripped out in yellow. It was incredible to see. So sharing that moment with so many people was a really fantastic experience. And that's something that, I don't know, you do the USL final, even though we lost, that atmosphere would always be like one of the greatest atmospheres I've experienced, like one of my favorite atmospheres I've ever experienced. But this is something that, despite being like the group stage, not a final or anything, was just a totally different level. Like the nerves, the feeling that you get, it was like inexplicable and undescribable. Really, it was incredible stuff. Roller coaster of emotion, every game. But it was just overall a great experience. And obviously we came up a bit short in that game against Senegal, a really good Senegal team, of course. But that had to happen eventually with, such a young team that we had. So like you said, I think they can leave with their heads high. They put out a really, really good display of really, really fun soccer as well. I think everybody that tuned into the Ecuador games saw a really talented team, a really quick and high IQ team that can move the ball like at ease, and a team that put the Netherlands, who took Argentina, the world champions, to penalties. A team that should have beaten the Netherlands by 2 goals. In all honesty, we got an offsides call that was questionable at best, and that post that rings in my head till today. That being said, I mean, it's not to be like sour about that or anything. It was really just I left that game against the Netherlands, and all the Ecuadorians there shared the same feeling of just not being able to be any prouder of those kids. Because I mean, that's what a lot of the players on the team are, is kids. They're my age. A few of them are younger than me. 20, 19, 18 years old, a couple of them. It's really, really cool stuff. And it's the same thing with the U.S. team, James, that you mentioned. And having the chance to see the U.S. unfortunately lose to the Netherlands was a great experience as well, though. And I think both, my countries have a fantastic future ahead of them. 2026 is going to be a great, great, great tournament for both of them. And if the reports about the U.S. playing in the Copa America next year are true, I think, again, both of my countries have a really good chance of, taking it all the way to the final. Really, really. Like, I truly believe that, especially Ecuador, for how underrated they continue to be. They're still like outside the top 40 in the FIFA world rankings for some reason.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't understand how it works, really. It doesn't make any sense, because there's some teams that from South America that didn't qualify to the World Cup above them, including like Colombia and Peru and whatnot. But whatever, that's a side point. Apart from that, like, just to touch on like the cultural experience of seeing fans from all 32 countries was incredible. I've never been in an atmosphere like that where so many countries come together, or at least pretend to come together for a few weeks. It was a really cool thing to be exposed to that many cultures, that many people, all at once, so many different languages being spoken at the same time in the same place. It was truly kind of a culture shock, but in a good culture shock. To hear so many languages being spoken at the same time was fantastic. And really, I am like so excited to see that come to the US in 2026. Even though we're not hosting here in Tampa, and my second home right now in DC isn't hosting, but there's still plenty of cities relatively nearby that'll be hosting games. And being a focal point for that shared cultural experience. So cannot be more excited for that. And really just looking forward to the future that the Ecuadorian and U.S. national teams have. I think both countries just have a really, really great team on their hands. So excited. Yeah, I will say, like, as a host nation, Qatar was an interesting experience as well. I'm not gonna, like, everybody's very well aware of their problems, and the problems leading up to the World Cup. And I will say, like, being there, there were a lot of moments and throughout the tournament and the events that felt very much like just huge pieces of propaganda, which was pretty easy to read through or to see through if you're, like, a normal person. But that being said, I will give them, I will say that, to be fair, I feel like most international events serve as pieces of propaganda for whatever country is hosting them. So it's not too different from what any other country would do. But being there and seeing that in person, kind of knowing the context of the issues leading up to the World Cup, was a little bit uncomfortable at times. But yeah, apart from that, the experience of the World Cup itself was just incredible. And like I said, just so excited to see that cultural experience come to the U.S. in 2026, because obviously we hosted it not too long ago. I don't know why I'm blanking on the year, James, when the U.S. last hosted, but
94.
Right, that's it. Obviously I wasn't around for that, but I'm so excited to see that kind of in person in my home country. So yeah, that's my little recap of my experience in the World Cup in Qatar. I talked to a bunch of people, experienced so many new languages for the first time, recorded some brief interviews with people that I'm working on editing together and putting it into, like, a mini, like, little 8-minute podcast episode. And I'll put it out on Twitter at some point. Don't know when that'll happen, but just I cannot emphasize how cool it was to experience. I'm repeating myself, but it's worth repeating, to experience that many cultures at once. Very, very unique.
Yeah, that's awesome. I said earlier that I grew up playing soccer and I didn't really like it a lot. I think that's because at the time I saw it mostly as a chore, but what really sparked my interest in, like, the fandom of it was actually after the 2002 World Cup. In a math book I had, this is going to sound very weird, but I saw a picture of a crowd from the 2002 World Cup in South Korea and Japan. And it was, the city center of Seoul, South Korea, sea of red, and it was all just people supporting, their country, obviously. And I was like, oh my God, this is a thing that happens. Like, people gather like this, and it's all just for soccer, this sport that I play every Tuesday and Thursday, and have to go get up early on Saturday mornings and go somewhere that I don't even want to because it's really hot out, and have to kick a ball around. But then, yeah, the 2006 World Cup came around, and I watched that, and I got to see from a distance the stuff that you're talking about. And yeah, everything that you said, it does leave me so excited for 2026.
Yeah.
I can't wait to actually be able to take that in person. I think that, having the literal melting pot come to your door is amazing. That's why I fell in love with soccer. It is truly the world's game. You can catch all of these countries making the World Cup and having a good run. Ecuador and South Korea and Australia, and varied countries as you can get in that sense. Teams in Africa doing well, all of that, like, it's incredible. But yeah, I'm so excited for the little series that you're gonna put out. I'm gonna listen to that for sure, and I think that it just makes me so happy for the chance that this will come around and I'll be able to experience it too. Yeah. As for the soccer out there, I think that, there's been some incredible stuff going on. Like you said, Carlos, Ecuador and the U.S. both have two awesome young teams. I was not as in tune with the Ecuadorian team. I think the U.S. men's national team might be the team that I follow most in the world, whether that's club or national or anything. But Ecuador, I haven't seen a lot of their players because I don't watch a ton of the Premier League where a lot of them are actually playing. And, some of them are playing in different leagues like Belgium or the Bundesliga, and I haven't caught them as much. Ecuador look amazing out there. That Gonzalo Plata on the wing looked fantastic. And I think Moises Caicedo was one of my favorite players from the group stages. Pervis Estupiñán from Brighton as well. He's another incredible player. And the other guy that I feel might turn into something really good is Jeremy Sarmiento. He looks like a very good little player, and he only had very limited minutes out there. But my God, there is so much talent. I was like blown away watching this team and actually getting to see them, do what they can do. And they went out there, and a lot of teams. It's a truism in soccer that the defensive game wins you tournaments, and that's because in a tournament that's so short, it's only 7 games. It's not a 38 league or a 38 game league like most of the Premier League or the La Liga in Spain, what they play for. So you can only do it in that small amount of time. If you give up goals, it's going to cost you. But Ecuador went out and they played with this attacking verve, and they played so beautifully. It was like, watching a mini Brazil out there. It was fantastic.
No, it was really fun to watch, and I can assure you it was so much fun to watch in person and with the fans around. There really is a really good looking team for next World Cup and for the Copa America as well. And I talk about these young guys, but as somebody who's really begun to keep up with this system of young players that we've begun pushing out into the world over the last few years, I can already tell you that, apart from these young kids, there are some young budding superstars in the ranks coming up in the U20 team as well. And if you're, a soccer sicko such as myself, I highly encourage you to watch the U20 World Cup in January coming up, January 2023. The U20 World Cup is a fantastic opportunity to watch what will surely be the superstars of the near future. I think it was 2019 maybe was the U20 World Cup in Poland, and the US and Ecuador played each other. A lot of the guys on both of those teams back then are now starters or at least on the bench for the senior teams now. And there's some really good talent coming up the Ecuador U20 system. Just one name to throw out there, because I won't bore everybody with all 20 kids on the team that are really good. Just one name I'll throw out there that has really been catching the eyes of, even European clubs. This kid is 15 years old. His name is Kendry Paez, and he's been playing with the U18s. He's already been called up to the senior team for his club team, Independiente del Valle. He's 15 years old, and he's training with the senior team. And he's expected to make the U20 national team. This kid is look up his highlights when you have a chance. Kendry Paez, Kendry space last name Paez. Just an incredible talent, and I imagine he'll be one of those guys we're talking about in 2026 as a young superstar at that World Cup and a young superstar for the next World Cup as well. So, not to bore everybody down with the Ecuadorian national team system, but there's just some awesome stuff coming up and some awesome players with incredible stories in the very near future. So, again, highly encourage everybody to tune into the U20 World Cup in January, because that'll be the chance to see which of these players for all the countries, but again, for my personal interest, for Ecuador and the US, are going to be the players that truly step up and be superstars in the future.
I know what I'll be doing around my wedding days. But to finish up with the actual World Cup itself, there were some amazing games. There were some amazing upsets, Carlos.
Yeah.
I wanted to go through those now. So, we don't have to go through every team that made the round of 16, but the U.S. did. They unfortunately lost to the Netherlands, as I said.
Yeah.
Senegal, who did get through ahead of Ecuador, they ended up losing to England 3-0. Morocco won their group and ended up going through. They beat Spain on penalties, so that was a major upset. And Japan also won their group, a group that had Germany and Spain in it. And that's how Japan got through, which was, all of those were stunning upsets. Then in the next round, Brazil obliterated South Korea, and that was an incredible game to watch. France and Argentina both got through in varying degree, but they did pretty damn well, obviously, through that round. And then in the round or past the round of 16, the Netherlands took Argentina all the way to penalties, where Emiliano Martinez, the goalkeeper for Argentina, came up with his usual antics and ended up knocking the Netherlands out. If you don't know what I'm talking about, he is the ultimate shit-housing goalkeeper. He will put any penalty taker off their game because he is a monster, and he loves to get in your face. So he did that to good effect there. Croatia ended up beating Brazil in what was a major upset. I don't know who saw that coming. It certainly wasn't me, but there you go. The things that you see in in a World Cup, it's crazy. The other games, I think it was Portugal, after they beat Switzerland 6-1, they ended up playing Morocco, and Morocco won again. They took Portugal to actually, no, they didn't take them to penalties. I'm sorry. They beat Portugal in the quarterfinals on a 1-0 result, where the guy who scored, Youssef En-Nesyri, I saw this online, jumped over 9 feet in the air to get his head on the ball and beat the Portuguese goalkeeper to score the 1 goal in the game. Like, just crazy stuff. Absolutely insane. I don't know. Again, these are things that you can't predict, really. France beat England in what was an incredible game as well. It was one of the better games of the tournament, even if it was unfortunate for the English people that I was watching with, but that's just how it goes, unfortunately. And from the semifinals, Argentina was able to smack Croatia back out of the tournament and make the final. And France was able to handle Morocco, despite Morocco putting up a hell of a fight and really winning a lot of support from all of Africa, all of the Arab world, and probably anyone who didn't have, who was a neutral going into that game. Then in the third place game, Croatia beat Morocco, and it actually turned out to be a lot feistier than I think a lot of third place games do. But in the final on Sunday, Carlos, it was Lionel Messi versus Kylian Mbappe, and despite an incredible game, probably, I'm going to say because of the occasion, it was one of the best soccer games I've ever seen. It's probably the best because of the way that it ended. It was just so wild. And the way that it broke down was Argentina scored first and second. It was going into 10 minutes left. Kylian Mbappe then is able to score a penalty for France off of a kind of a silly foul from an Argentinian defender, Nicolas Otamendi. Then Kylian Mbappe scores one of the best goals I've ever seen in a World Cup off of a half volley. To get the power behind that, to be able to score from outside the 18-yard box almost, it's incredible. So then it goes to extra time, and Argentina scores again. Lionel Messi, one of the best players ever, if not the best player ever, scores off of a rebound from a very well-worked play. And then you're like, okay, all of my friends and I happen to be supporting Argentina because personally, I've wanted Messi to win a World Cup his whole playing career. And I was waiting all along in this World Cup, expecting that Argentina might be able to do it. So, we were all happy, on the verge of tears. And then what happens? France comes back and scores again. And there's another penalty. And it's 3-3, and it goes to penalties. And so from there, Kylian Mbappe starts it off for France. He scores. It's 1-0 in penalties. Then Lionel Messi steps up and scores, and it's 1-1. And here's where it got a little interesting. France stepped up, and it was saved by that same goalkeeper, Emiliano Martinez, doing his same stuff, doing his same shithousing tactics, I'll say. And, man, what a goalkeeper he is on penalties. If you have him in net, you are always in with a shout for the next round. Then Argentina scored, and France stepped up and missed, put it wide. So that goalkeeper, Martinez, did not actually have to make a save. Then Argentina stepped up and scored again. Then the last one, France scored. So at this point, it is 3-2. if Argentina scores the next one, it's over. And Gonzalo Montiel, a player who wasn't really well heralded throughout the tournament. He's a right back, not known for scoring, but he did give up the penalty that led to Kylian Mbappe's third goal in the game itself. He steps up and he puts it home, and Argentina are World Cup winners. That is when all of my friends and I did truly lose it. We were hugging everybody that we could find around us. There were, people in Barcelona shirts, people in Argentina shirts, and people in maybe some other shirts like Boca Juniors or that kind of stuff. But everybody there that was around us, we were all celebrating for Argentina. And Carlos, I don't know how you watched the World Cup final, but it was a madhouse at McDitton's on South Howard. And I got to say, that bar was actually named in Soccer America's, one of their best bars to watch soccer in for the upcoming World Cup. And it absolutely is. I will give them their due. They are a great soccer host.
That's awesome to hear. No, I mean, I was watching it here at home with actually like lifelong friends of mine that I haven't seen since high school for some reason. Just be able to caught up with them, as well as a bunch of family of mine. We all just got together 10 a.m. over here, got some breakfast, brought it over, and just had a really, really good time watching that game. I obviously thought, I think like most people, that Argentina had the title locked in the bag, and then all of a sudden Mbappe just existed. And all of a sudden we're going to overtime, like you said, and really, really just a stunning game. I was pulling for Argentina, again, as the last South American team in the tournament. And given the fact that a South American team hasn't won since 2002 with Brazil, it had been, 5 straight European teams. Kind of got sick of it. So I was ready for a South American team to pull it out. And glad Argentina did, and I'm glad Messi did as well.
Yeah,
I think it kind of shows the cultural effect and influence that Messi has had on our world, and especially the world of soccer, obviously, that essentially the whole world was rooting for Argentina when there really, I guess, wasn't much reason to do so. It felt like everybody was, because of Lionel Messi, of course. So really, really happy for him. It feels like a storybook ending, and if he was smart, he'd retire now and just end it on a high note. But obviously, guys like him are competitors, and they're not going to do that. That being said, if he does go to Inter Miami, hope we see him up here for the Suncoast Invitational or whatever we call it, if that still exists. Can you imagine Messi versus Rowdies at Al Lang? That would be incredible.
I don't know what I would do.
Only bad thing is that now we won't have Guanzati to school him in how to be a forward.
Right.
Yeah, but hopefully that happens, because that'd be an interesting experience, to say the least. We've already had, I don't even know. I was gonna say, I don't want to totally be wrong, but I know we've had some legendary baseball players play at Al Lang in the past. Why not add Messi to the list of just random legends who played at the Tampa Bay Rowdies home stadium? So anyway, I think it's worth mentioning again Morocco as well.
Yes,
just an incredible run that they had, and they basically did what you mentioned earlier. They locked in defensively and did not let anybody score against them. That's what happened. They stuck to their plan and they did it well. Obviously, eventually they came up a little bit short, but really, really impressed by them. The first people I met going to the World Cup, on my flight from Orlando at the time to London and then to Doha. First people I met going to the World Cup were 3 Moroccan fans that had lived in Orlando for 30 years at this point.
That's wild.
But they were all locked in. They had all their gear. They were wearing their scarves and everything. Got to chatting with them. And they swore to me. They said, we're going to make it out of the group stage. We're going to make it to the quarterfinals. And I was like, listen, man, you sound crazy right now, but me probably saying Ecuador is going to make the quarterfinals probably sounds crazy to you too. So I'll believe you. I didn't really believe them, but I guess they were right. And more, obviously they made it to the semifinals. So really, really happy for them. Really happy for those guys whose names I totally forgot. But if by chance they happen to hear this, which would be so random, I'm happy for you guys. So good for Morocco. It was really, really cool to see them show out for all of Africa and as well, I guess, for the Arab world. So really, really cool to see. Just honestly,
I
a great
loved
World
that.
Cup.
Yeah, I loved that, and one thing that carries over from that picture that I found in a math book in school is I just love seeing the crowds, for these teams when they are, a lot of them are over or were over in Qatar. I suppose they're not now, but a lot of them celebrating back home. It's always amazing to see, and when you can watch the crowd celebrate in the goals that they scored when they were in Morocco, and if you could see the crowds from when Argentina won from over in Buenos Aires. I mean, I got to be honest, for anyone who's listening to this and follows me on Twitter, I'm sorry that I've been spamming your timeline with all my retweets of fan footage from the streets of Buenos Aires and the streets of Rabat and the streets of Doha. But it's literally my favorite thing about this sport, and it brings a tear to my eye from this far away vantage point that I'm not able to be there and see. Yeah, like literally hundreds of thousands, millions of people on the streets of Buenos Aires today just to welcome Lionel Messi and the rest of the Argentinian team back to the country with the World Cup trophy. And God, it was incredible. So I apologize for the spam, but also I don't, because if you check it out, I'm certain you're going to like it just as much as I did.
Yeah, it's really cool content. All those videos of, everybody out there on the street celebrating. I was up last night and I saw the live stream of the Argentinian plane landing.
God,
back home yesterday, and all the fans out in the streets, and really, really incredible stuff. And again, just so happy for them. So happy for Lionel Messi and all those guys that deserved it. The Argentinian squad is a team full of characters. And they were so entertaining to see, not only win the World Cup, but obviously celebrate the World Cup in their various ways. They were
exactly
so entertaining. So I think one of the more entertaining teams won the World Cup, fortunately, this year.
And again, in fashion, because that was the best World Cup final and probably one of the best games I will ever see in my life. But anyway,
sure.
that is going to do it, I think, for the RBLR coverage of the World Cup, at least for now. We will leave it up to our intrepid on-the-scene reporter, Carlos, to determine what he wants to put out there. But that'll do it for here. And we're going to move into our final segment, Extra Time.
Yeah.
So let's go through these relatively quickly, Carlos, because we are running a little long for what was supposed to be a shorter show after many longer episodes that Eureka and I did before now. Kyle Gregg has announced that he is retiring from soccer, so congratulations to him on an amazing USL career. I think that he is a player who was around for roughly a decade, and he bounced through a lot of teams, but you don't stick around without having some quality. So he deserves his retirement, and I hope that obviously whatever he does, if it's still related to soccer, once he retires from actually playing, it will probably be in a great role. Maybe that's coaching, maybe that's commentating, I don't know. But I bet he will be doing something pretty cool regardless.
For sure. As much as I won't say clowned on him this season, as much as I had wished for more production from him this year at times, I could tell that his locker room presence and kind of those intangibles, quote unquote, that people love to mention when it comes to the world of sports, I could tell he was one of those guys that was a great locker room presence. And I remember it feels like after every game, his kids would be out there kicking the ball into the goal. Really, really was just seeming to bring a positive vibe and energy to this Tampa Bay team. So happy for him. Happy that he got to end his career over here with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. I think he is such a great person from the few times that I've got to chat with him. And like you said, I'm sure he's going to be one of those people that doesn't stay away from the game for too long, given his lengthy career in the world of soccer. And yeah, again, he just seems like such a positive energy bringer that it seems like he would be someone who comes back as an assistant coach for, I say comes back, but maybe not to the Rowdies, maybe to Louisville or wherever he spent some time in. So happy for him and congratulations to him.
Yeah, absolutely. In Rowdy's current news, they have signed a new midfielder and likely winger, Charlie Dennis from Oakland Roots. He is going to be one of our newer players, obviously, but I think that I remember him best from, the couple games or the couple times that I've seen Oakland Roots play, including against the Rowdies. He was a bit of a menace he was kind of like a winger / attacker. I think that it was in a roughly 3-4-3 formation, and he was in one of the outside spots in the 3 up front. So yeah, he reminded me of an English dribbler who loved to get the ball at his feet and kind of maybe take you on with a little bit of cockiness. So I'm not sure that the Rowdies will have any use for that. I'm just kidding. Of course, I believe that Charlie Dennis is going to be a very good signing. And I think that Neil Collins obviously knows what he's doing when he's picking players out to try and bring into the team. I think that Charlie Dennis was actually pretty impressive in just that one game specifically. So he possibly even had his eye on Charlie Dennis. So I'm hoping that Neil Collins has unearthed a little diamond here. And do you have any thoughts, Carlos, on either Charlie Dennis or the signing that was announced last week, Zachary Herivo, who you were not here to cover at the time, but someone that is another very exciting player for me?
Yeah. Let me touch on Herivo for a second. Am I pronouncing that right? Because I fully don't know how to pronounce his name. Herivo?
I think it's something like Erivo, but I'm not going to try and try and break out my high school French classes in the year 2022.
Fair
almost
enough.
A decade on.
Fair enough. We'll stick with Zach for now. It's how we're to our new signing. He's somebody that caught my eye when we played against Birmingham on those multiple occasions. Really, really just a physical presence, first of all, as somebody who can move really well on the ball is what I noticed first about him. Really agile for his height, a very lanky player. And I think height was something we missed at a couple points last season.
Yeah.
So really, really glad to see a guy of his height in the midfield, which is not usually where you see some height, but definitely happy with that signing. Looks like a really good piece to add to the defensive midfield, but based on those games that he played against us and based on the little bit I've seen of him outside of those games against us, it looks like he can pose an attacking threat as well because, like I said, he moves really well on the ball and obviously an aerial presence for sure. And then when it comes to Charlie Dennis, I did not know he existed before we announced the signing. Obviously saw him play against us, but I not somebody that, I noticed in particular. That being said, seeing what he can bring to the table, I'm super duper excited. It looks like he's one of those guys that can let it rip outside the box. And that's something that this team has always needed a little bit more of when it comes to being aggressive and shot taking. So really excited to see him, really excited to see where he fits into the formation we will use. Not that we know what formation we're going to use because we currently have like 9 midfielders and no forwards.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, is he going to be a winger? Is he going to be kind of like a central piece? Who really knows? Other than Neil Collins, looks like he sometimes is more of a winger piece, but I'm out at this point. I'm just speculating, to be honest, because looks like he's very versatile, and that's really, really valuable at this level of soccer. You need people who can play multiple positions. You never know when somebody's going to go down with an injury. You never know when somebody just falls out of form. Looks like he's a guy that can play at multiple spots. So really happy to have him. Excited to see what he can do, and hopefully we have a decent amount of preseason games to see what his role is going to look like before the season starts.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that either. Just getting the chance to look at it, like you said, and actually see what we're trying to do, because this is obviously going to be a good year of transition. So we'll have to see what it turns into. The next piece of news is that today, actually, a couple of hours before we started here, the new season format dropped by the USL. As per usual, we will play every team in our conference twice, but we will also play every Western Conference team once. And I believe Eureka pointed this out to us, but Carlos, the playoffs are supposed to be expanded by 1 team to 8. So there will be 8 teams per conference, I believe, participating in the playoffs. Do you have, I think we should do this, a little bit more in depth in the future, but do you have any immediate thoughts about what you expect this to look like or anything like that?
No, I'll save my thoughts on like postseason stuff and everything for a way too early preview at some point soon.
There we go.
But I will say that the fact that we'll be playing every Western Conference team once is something that I've always desired.
Very exciting.
Really, really happy to see that take shape. I think that can lead to a lot of cool new venues out on the West Coast being explored for us Rowdies fans. I think it can lead to some old, sparks of tension and rivalry renewed, wherever we're playing, whether it's home or away. Always makes the game a little more interesting when there's some history. And there's some teams on the West Coast which we have history with, like obviously Phoenix Rising is one that sticks out to me as always a really fun matchup. And I'm sure it'll be a fun matchup this year as well. So excited to see that play out. I'm excited to see some new teams at Outlang, hopefully. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a great time.
Yeah. I'm hopeful, like Matt Cox said when we had him on, that we might see some Sacramento Republic out here, or possibly, if we end up going out there, then we'll see what that was like too. But, we're obviously going to have to see who plays where and at what time to see if it fits into either of our schedule, because I'm sure I would like to get out to some of those venues, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
The last piece of news we have, and this isn't really news, it's more reports, because there isn't anything concrete to go off of, but it's worth covering, Carlos. It's actually pretty important here. The Tampa Bay Rowdies ownership group, so that's led by Stuart Sternberg, it should be noted, is in the running for the 14th expansion slot in the NWSL. For anyone unaware, that is the National Women's Soccer League, and that is the league in which you will find such famous players as Alex Morgan, as Megan Rapinoe, as Sophia Smith, and Becky Sauerbrunn, Crystal Dunn, all of those huge names in women's soccer and for the U.S. women's national team. I think we could finally have a chance not only to have a women's soccer team here, but a top-level women's soccer team here. Now, is this going to pan out? We don't know. We are in the running, supposedly, according to these reports, along with an ownership group from Boston and an ownership group from, I guess, the San Jose area, something like that. So, they're going to have a lot of money on the San Jose side, on the Boston side. I think that, there's obviously a lot of money within the Rowdies and Rays ownership group. Is it enough to turn their heads? Who knows? But I mean, Carlos, that would be pretty exciting. I don't know what they would do in terms of, a venue for the team to play in, but
yeah,
God, that would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Totally.
And I'm crossing my fingers and toes hoping for this.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of answers the question of why we've been kind of quiet on the USLW League front. Kind of expected us to get into that world, especially because at some point the Rowdies put out that adding a women's team to the club was part of the near-term goals of the club. So I guess that answers why they've been kind of quiet on the W League or the Super League front. So hopefully that can pan out. Obviously, wouldn't be the first USL team to have a team in the NWSL. I'm obviously referring to Louisville as the other one.
And North Carolina FC.
Oh, totally right. I totally forgot about that. And they're in USL League One. So, I mean, yeah, I think there's precedent for us. It's not like it'd be out of the ordinary or anything. Yeah, I would be curious, like you said, to see like how the venue situation works out. I guess it would make sense that they just play at Outlang. I don't know. Maybe that leads to some upgrades to the venue.
All the better.
Yeah, I'm sure NWSL has some sort of like venue requirements that make it such that a baseball format stadium might need to be a little bit improved upon. So we'll see what happens with that. Obviously, would love to see more renovations to Outlang. The old little crumbling stadium is a great location, but it does need a little bit of a facelift. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I would be really, really excited to see that come to Tampa, to Tampa Bay. And of course, like that there's already a seed for a really fun matchup with the Pride down I-4 in Orlando. So I'm sure there's great marketing opportunities for the league with that as well, because I'm not sure there's a ton of like rivalries per se in the NWSL that kind of stick out as like really, really like particular like strong rivalry matchups. I think this would be one that already has a seed for it. And it doesn't, I think sometimes U.S. soccer struggles with creating like artificial rivalries. And they brand it like whatever they brand it with like wacky names.
Heineken whatever. Rivalry Week.
Yeah, it's just so weird to me. But this is something that doesn't need to be branded or marketed any more than it already is. So would be really, really fun. Would love to play any sort of Orlando team more regularly because it creates incredible atmospheres, really fun atmospheres both there and here. So would be a great time, and I hope it does play out. Quick side note, would have never taken Stu Sternberg to be somebody who wants to put a foot into NWSL and professional women's soccer. I fully thought that his ownership of the Rowdies would lead to really like no women's soccer. Just didn't think that was something that'd be on his priority list, especially with like, all the problems that the Rays organization constantly deals with player signings and all the other stuff about the stadiums. So honestly, to his credit, I'm happy that he's getting involved in the world of women's soccer, and I hope it works out for him and for us. It'd be really, really fun for everybody involved here in the Bay Area. So just really exciting stuff, and I hope we can see that happen, because I think what was I forgot the year on the article that it said a team would be looking to be added by like 2026.
I don't know the specific year.
I'll go back and check at some point after this, so don't quote me on that. But it would be something that's a pretty quick turnaround, not too distant future. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, very, very exciting stuff.
Yeah. That's actually a point that I didn't consider, Carlos, the fact that we have a rivalry aspect. One of the things that drives sports and is narratives, obviously, and there's a narrative inherent in rivalry. If you plop a team in the San Jose area, their closest rival is going to be, I don't know, Kansas City or Portland or, Los Angeles. Those aren't real rivalries. And, I was thinking that maybe because there's already a team in Florida, they might not want to do that. But the rivalry between a Tampa Bay team and an Orlando team, that is a narrative. That is an important narrative. And I think that that would be super cool. I think that, sure. As much as, we would prefer that people are civil in terms of, their fandom when attending away games, there is definitely a history between Tampa Bay fans and Orlando fans. And, hopefully there's nothing like theft or petty violence or anything like that in the women's league fandom. But there is at least, that narrative. So something to think about, whoever is listening from the NWSL, just keep that in mind. If you want to market this, I think that there is a very obvious advertising campaign within putting the Tampa Bay Rowdies in the NWSL. And I wonder what that crest would look like too, because it obviously can't just be a man, right? It's got to be unless they want to put a mustachioed woman on the crest. I mean, I wouldn't mind that either.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see how they brand the team. I know it's like Racing Louisville is the counterpart to Louisville City FC.
Right, yeah.
I'm sure it'd be interesting to see how we brand that. I don't know. Maybe that's something to put out on Twitter and have the fans, debate what the best team would look like. Obviously, I feel like it has to be green and gold. So you have to think about what would look best with green and gold. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, obviously, this is looking way too ahead in the future, but not too ahead in the future because, as Eureka noted here, that the turnaround is actually much quicker than I even thought. They're looking to add the 2 new expansion bids by 2024. So that's really, really interesting. I mean, we're coming up on the beginning of 2023. We're talking about like maybe a year and a half turnaround when the NWSL season starts.
Yeah, pretty much
from now. So really, really interesting stuff. I guess it's a matter of just waiting around and seeing. I mean, there's not much we can do, right?
No, we can all plead and hope on Twitter, and other than that, I don't think we have too much of a say in this.
Yeah,
we can't. If you have a lot of money and you're listening, maybe you can email Stuart Sternberg and say, "Hey, I also have money. I would also like to contribute to this." But otherwise, I am out. I can't give him much more than my pocket change and. I'm moving out, so I could give him all the furniture in my room right now. But outside of that, I don't have much to contribute.
Nice. Yeah, and I think to go back to something you mentioned earlier, obviously about the Tampa Bay and Orlando, like proximity, I think you don't really have the excuse that some people brought up when it came to this potential like MLS to St. Pete and whatnot fiasco, that there was already a team in Miami and there's a team in Orlando. So it's like you can't really add a third team or whatever. Not that I bought into that at any point anyway.
No.
But it's not like there's a team in Miami or anything or any other team, Jacksonville per se. Like these would be the only two teams in Florida up to now. And obviously you're talking about one of like the biggest markets in the country. The Floridian market is begging for more soccer, I think, at any point. And I'd love to see that next step happen in Tampa Bay with an NWSL team.
Let's get the Tampa Bay, maybe Rowdies, in the NWSL. Let's get Jacksonville Armada into the USL Championship.
Oh my God,
Let's
please.
just keep building. But that is all for another time in the future. So for now, listeners, thank you for tuning in. We obviously do appreciate it. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. You can also use the hashtag AskRBLR if you'd like to get at us, or you can get at me. My at is RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos? Where could they reach you?
Yeah, come give me a follow on Twitter at CarlosTPA10. I've been tweeting a lot about Georgetown basketball, as is the season to do so for me. It's a roller coaster of emotions. It's mostly downhill. Very little ups right now in the world of Georgetown men's basketball. Georgetown women's basketball is doing pretty well, so that's really fun. But yeah, it's an experience. If you want to learn more about one of the most historic college basketball programs in the country and their rapid fall from grace, come follow me at CarlosCPA10, and that's what I'm tweeting about these days. But obviously, lots of content about the Rowdies, commentary, and begging for forwards on Twitter.
Yeah,
that's been a lot of my my tweets recently as well. So there are some upcoming signings to keep an eye out later this week for. Not that we know anything about them, but worth mentioning that they're 6'2" and 6'4" respectively, according to the Rowdies Twitter post. So we'll see what that means and who those players are. I really don't. I wouldn't have a clue about where to start, other than just looking for all the players last year that were 6'2" and 6'4" and trying to take a stab in the dark.
Yeah. I don't have much to offer yet, so I'm hoping for that to come out, and then it'll get a retweet. Let's say
Please
that.
be a forward. Please be a forward. That's it.
And if you would like to follow for more news, because we will be talking about it next week, you can like and subscribe to our podcast. We're on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and all other major podcast platforms. So for another week, I will say congratulations to Argentina and congratulations to Leo Messi. Happy to have you back here, Carlos, and come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.